Book review: Wake the Wild Creatures by Ren Suma. In Wake the Wild Creatures, Ren Suma returns with lush haunting and unforgettable tale that defies easy categorization. It is part coming-of-age narrative, part feminist fable, and part psychological mystery cloaked in magic and memory. From its first lyrical lines to its final quiet reckoning, this novel pulses with wild energy, questioning what it means to be free, and at what cost. At the heart of this atmospheric story is 16-year-old Talia, a girl caught between two worlds, the wild, mystical mountaintop refuge where she once lived with her mother and commune of women, and the gray, conformist suburban life she's been forced into after her mother's arrest. Talia's voice is raw, poetic, and powerful, inviting readers into deeply interior narrative shaped by longing, loss, and fierce desire for belonging. 3 years before the novel begins, Talia lived in the Neves, a crumbling hotel cloaked in magical mist and nestled deep in the Catskill Mountains. The Neves was more than just a hideaway. It was sanctuary for women fleeing violence, oppression, and the demands of patriarchal world. It was also a place ruled by unspoken codes, rituals, and the watchful presence of Pola, Talia's mother, whose enigmatic past and forceful personality shaped the community in complex and sometimes contradictory ways. But that fragile utopia shattered when the outside world came crashing in. Flashing lights, men in uniforms, accusations of murder. Pola was arrested, and Talia was torn from the only home she'd ever known. Now living with estranged relatives in worlds she despises, Talia waits. She refuses to believe the Neves is gone. She refuses to accept the version of her mother fed to her by the news and social workers. Somewhere hidden in the mist, the Neves still calls to her, and so she watches for signs, collects maps and memories, and prepares for the day she can return. Plot summary: in Wake the Wild Creatures, Ren Suma weaves haunting and hypnotic tale of rebellion, memory, and maternal legacy, told through the voice of 16-year-old Talia, girl displaced from the only world she's ever truly belonged to. Mist-shrouded mountaintop sanctuary called the Neves. 3 years before the novel begins, Talia was living an enchanted, if unconventional, life with her mother Pola in a close-knit community of women in the decaying grandeur of the Neves Hotel, hidden deep in the Catskill Mountains. The women, many of them escapees from abuse, from the law, from society's crushing expectations, had carved out life defined by connection, resistance, and quiet magic. Shielded from the outside world by an eerie mist that seemed home, life, the Neves stood as symbol of freedom and refuge. But safety, it turns out, is a fragile thing. When flashing lights and law enforcement descend upon him, everything unravels. Pola is arrested and accused of murder. The community is scattered, and Talia is wrenched from her mother and the only home she's ever known. Now, 3 years later, Talia lives in a sterile suburban home with an aunt who sees her as a burden, forced to navigate a society she views with contempt. Honor the women's rituals, the sense of belonging, and the wild freedom of the forest in its place. School boys who lure, and life disconnected from nature and intuition. But one thing keeps Talia moving forward, her plan to return to the Neves. Talia waits for sign from Pola, something that marked the time to return. She collects fragments of memory and rumor, maps drawn in secret, and stories whispered to her in dreams. Her plan is to make the journey back to the mountain, to find her mother, and to reclaim the Neves, even if it's in ruins. But as she prepares for her escape, doubts begin to fester. Why hasn't her mother reached out directly? What happened the night of the raid? And most terrifying of all, was someone from within the community responsible for their downfall? As Talia's quest begins, she's joined, reluctantly at first, by a boy named Theo, who carries his own secrets and grief. Though their worlds couldn't be more different, their bond grows as they uncover truths hidden in the shadows of the Neves. Theo's presence becomes both tethered to reality and reminder of what trust and companionship might look like outside the insular world Talia came from. Together, they navigate a world full of watchers, whispers, and memories that stay. As they journey closer to the Catskills, Talia begins to question not just the world she left, but the one she's walking back into. Was the Neves really utopia, or was it something more complicated? Beautiful, yes, but also flawed and built on secrets. Talia recalls moments of tension, power struggles among the women, and mother who could be both loving and distant, protective and manipulative. The magical mist that surrounds the Neves begins to feel less like protection and more like warning. As she approaches the mountain, the novel shifts, coming dreamlike, almost surreal, as if Talia is crossing into another world entirely. The line between memory and myth blurs. Pola appears, older, changed, but still enigmatic. Reunited, Talia must face the reality of who her mother is and what she may have done. Pola claims she was framed, that the arrest was orchestrated by someone close to him, But she also seems more desperate now, more hardened. The final act of the novel unspools with tension as Talia discovers the truth about the community's collapse. The betrayal came not from outside, but within, from women who had once believed in their mission but was driven by jealousy and fear. The Neves was never just sanctuary. It was also a place of unresolved trauma, power imbalances, and human flaws. That amid the ruins, Talia finds purpose, the magic of the mist, whether literal or metaphorical, has not vanished entirely. It remains echoing the voices of women who lived and loved there. But it is not the same place she left, and she is no longer the same girl. She understands now that freedom is in place, its choice, and sometimes forging new path means letting go of the one you've clung to. In the end, Talia does not reclaim the Neves in the way she imagined. Instead, she walks away from the ruins with deeper sense of self, an understanding of her mother's complexities, and vision of resistance that stretches beyond one mountaintop, with Theo by her, not as savior, but as fellow traveler. Talia begins to imagine new ways to live, new kinds of refuge and future shaped not just by rage, but by resilience and hope. Wake the Wild Creatures is spellbinding exploration of girlhood, intergenerational bonds, and the fine line between sanctuary and captivity. Suma's prose is lush and lyrical, brimming with rage and tenderness. The novel captures the wildness of the human spirit and the danger of romanticizing escape without reckoning with the past. It is a story of mythic weight, grounded in the very real struggles of young women finding their voices in a world that seeks to silence them. Through Talia, readers are reminded that wildness is not weakness, and that returning home sometimes means redefining what home truly is. Themes of displacement, memory, and matrilineal legacy. Suma is master of creating interior landscapes that mirror characters' emotional states, and Wake the Wild Creatures is no exception. The tension between Talia's lived past and the sterile reality she now occupies forms the emotional core of the novel. Her memories of the Neves are lush, mythic, and tinged with both reverence and unease. The Neves is a place of female power and healing, but also shaped by secrecy, control, and trauma. Much of the novel's power lies in its exploration of the mother-daughter dynamic. Pola is an elusive figure, brilliant, intense, sometimes cold, often absent. Talia idolizes her, fears her, and aches for her approval. Pola's arrest fractures more than just the community. It breaks the myth Talia has built around their life together. And yet the novel does not position Pola as villain or saint. Instead, Suma gives us woman made of contradictions, forged in pain, shaped by survival. Pola is mirror in which Talia must confront her own complexities. The relationship between Talia and Pola is steeped in questions of inheritance, of ideal, identity, and responsibility. What does it mean to be her mother's daughter? Can one inherit rage and still seek peace? Is it possible to honor legacy without being consumed by it? These questions ripple through every page, drawing readers into Talia's evolving understanding of herself and the world around her. Lyrical prose and dreamlike atmosphere. Suma's prose is characteristically lyrical, poetic, and immersive. She conjures vivid images and emotional truths with economy and precision, often blurring the line between memory and myth, dream and reality. The mist that surrounds the Neves is both literal and metaphorical. Cloak of protection and obfuscation, symbol of mystery and erasure. The novel unfolds with quiet, almost hypnotic rhythm, flashbacks, interwoven with present-day scenes, and the structure mimics the hazy, nonlinear way memory functions. This style may not appeal to readers looking for fast-paced action, but for those willing to sink into Suma's lyrical world, the reward is deep and resonant. Throughout the book, nature is living force. Trees whisper secrets, mist conceals truths, and animals seem to carry the spirits of those lost or forgotten. The natural world becomes character in its own right. Wild, watchful, protective. Talia's connection to it is not just symbolic, but deeply spiritual. Her longing for the Neves is as much about reclaiming this sacred bond as it is about returning to physical place. Subtle magic and symbolism. Though Wake the Wild Creatures includes elements of magic, it is not fantasy in the traditional sense. The magic here is elusive, intuitive, rooted in folklore and feminine ritual. It exists in the margins. Half seen, half believed. Is the mist truly enchanted, or is it psychological projection? Did the Neves offer supernatural protection, or was it simply the power of collective will? Suma never gives easy answers, and that ambiguity is one of the novel's greatest strengths. The magic is metaphor for memory, for belief, for the stories women tell themselves in order to survive. It speaks to the liminal space between trauma and healing, the possibility that some truths are too wild to be explained in literal terms. The title itself, Wake the Wild Creatures, serves as rallying cry and invocation. It suggests reawakening of something ancient. Primal within Talia is something buried by societal expectation and familial exile. In returning to the mountain, Talia isn't just seeking her mother. She's calling forth the feral parts of herself that have been forced into silence. A complex portrait of resistance. At its core, Wake the Wild Creatures is a story about resistance against patriarchy, against conformity, against the erasure of women's histories. The Neves was radical experiment vision of life outside male control, and yet Suma does not idealize it. The community was flawed, filled with women who carried their own wounds and made questionable choices. Talia begins to recognize that even places of sanctuary become cages. One of the novel's most poignant insights is that resistance itself is complicated. It can be driven by anger, by pain, by fear, but also by love, by hope, by the desire to create something better. Talia's journey is not about returning to lost utopia, but about learning to build something new from the ashes of the old. When she uncovers the truth behind the betrayal that led to Pola's arrest, Talia is forced to confront the limits. Idealism. Sometimes the danger comes not from outside forces, but from within. Jealousy, fear, hunger for control. That this revelation doesn't lead her to despair. Instead, it galvanizes her. She realizes that the needs can't be resurrected, but its spirit can be carried forward in a different way. A note on gender, violence, and the female body. Suma does not shy away from the realities that shape the women of the Neves: abuse, gaslighting, sexual violence. These traumas are part of their collective history. Talia herself encounters the casual misogyny of everyday life in her new home, where her body is objectified, her voice dismissed, her autonomy questioned. In one chilling scene, classmate corners her, assuming that her silence means permission. Another teacher implies that her distrust of authority is irrational. These moments, handled with nuance and restraint, underscore the urgent need for safe spaces and affirming communities, but also reveal how such spaces can still be haunted by the outside world. The novel's portrayal of female rage is especially powerful. Talia's anger is never framed as dangerous or wrong. It is necessary, purifying, even transformative. In culture that grows to be small and silent, Talia's refusal to shrink is radical. Her journey is not toward calm or conformity, but toward fiercer, fuller version of herself. Final thoughts. Wake the Wild Creatures is a novel that lives in the in-between. Between memory and myth, safety and danger, love and betrayal. It is a story about the homes we lose and the ones we build within ourselves. It does not offer easy resolutions or neat moral lessons. Instead, it offers mirror, fractured luminous, reflecting back the complexities of girlhood, motherhood, and the wild power of resistance. Ren Suma has always written stories that inhabit the margins, those strange, beautiful places where magic slips through the cracks of the real. In this novel, she takes us deeper into that space than ever before. The result is haunting, lyrical meditation on freedom, grief, and the fierce love that binds us, even when it breaks us. For readers who appreciate novels that trust them to sit with ambiguity, who crave stories about girls who fight with their whole hearts, who are drawn to language that sings and scars, Wake the Wild Creatures is must-read. Rating 5/5.